Do you ever feel burnt out? Or maybe you have a meltdown? Well, on this video, I'm going to explore the differences between autistic meltdowns and autistic burnouts. Plus, I'll do my best to share some strategies to avoid both. So let's go. Oh, hey, I'm Orion Kelly, that autistic guy. And since my diagnosis later in life, I've devoted my time to advocating for the autistic community. And I do that through my podcasts and these YouTube videos. My goal is to raise a level of understanding, acceptance, and appreciation of the autistic community. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in being a part of, I would be so happy, so grateful if you'd take the time to subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can also check me out on my website if you'd like, orionkelly.com.au. On the website, you'll find podcasts, blogs, videos, details on me. You can even reach out and say, hey, orionkelly.com.au. Okay, let's go. I reckon the best way to start off this discussion is by defining what an autistic meltdown is and what an autistic burnout is. So let's start with autistic meltdowns. Simply put, an autistic meltdown is an uncontrollable response by our brain being triggered by environmental, emotional, social, or physical overstimulation or understimulation. It's a sign of distress, a distress signal, a warning. Our brain is telling us, and I guess the outside world, that it has lost control of emotions and feelings. So that is in essence an autistic meltdown. Now, let's define what an autistic burnout is. An autistic burnout is an intense physical, mental, or emotional exhaustion. And this intense exhaustion can lead to a loss of skills, motivation, or even just an ability to achieve really anything you would usually achieve on a day-to-day basis. And not to complicate it, but an autistic person experiencing more autistic meltdowns or shutdowns is actually a sign that you are currently experiencing autistic burnout. I know it sounds complicated, but that is one of the easiest ways of seeing there is actually a difference. It's the meltdowns that leads to the burnout. And then when you're experiencing burnout, you are no longer able to control the regulation and the masking, and therefore you melt down or shut down more. Rightio, we've defined them. But now, how do the causes and triggers of autistic meltdown versus autistic burnout differ? We'll start off with autistic meltdowns, and again, like I always like to say, just my own personal lived experiences, not speaking on behalf of anyone else, just sharing my experiences to hopefully help you grasp these topics and understand them a bit more deeper, or even just start conversations. I think autistic burnout triggers and causes are far more easy to put a finger on. I actually think causes and triggers of autistic meltdowns and shutdowns are far harder to put a finger on. We have to look at it like we've talked about in the definition. We have to look at it like, okay, well, something has triggered it. Something has triggered your brain to be unable to continue to not only understand and grasp, but manage and deal with emotions and feelings. So what's triggered it? What's caused the meltdown? As a rule, generally, it's some degree of being overstimulated or understimulated. So keep in mind that the sensory input differences that an autistic person experiences, the way we actually see, hear, feel, experience the world around us is simply different. Another clear cause or trigger, change in plans, change in routines. Nothing to do with sensory inputs, but very much to do with the repetitive, restrictive behaviors experienced by most autistic people. Change of plans or change in routine, for the most part, can and will lead to some form of meltdown or shutdown. As an autistic dad, as an autistic husband, as an autistic adult, unexpected demands and stresses placed upon us can definitely trigger autistic meltdowns and shutdowns. Now, when you're younger in life, and you might just be young and dating or whatever, enjoying your life, just you and the world, there's not so many demands placed upon you because you are your own boss. When you get married and have kids, or simply when you have a partner or have a job, other demands are placed upon you. You're not putting upon you, and therefore you never realize until then that your capacity has reached its peak, and you can no longer achieve to cover that and your reaction is disproportionate to other neurotypical people whose capacities may be the same, but they can still understand that and deal with that. Experiencing high levels of emotion that overwhelm you, maybe they're your emotions and you just can't identify them or interpret them or express them. Maybe you're experiencing high levels of emotions from others, other people in your life. That can cause meltdowns. And an autistic person leaving their safe space, which usually is going to be clearly where they live, their home, their room, that environment, leaving their safe space, going to a new environment, going to a overwhelming environment, all clear causes and triggers of autistic meltdown. Now on to autistic burnout, the causes and triggers. And I would say everything I've just said that causes and triggers meltdowns, if you keep rinsing and repeating those, you will experience and it will cause autistic burnout. So in general terms, I'm going to go into more than this, but in general terms, it's the repetition of experiencing those causes and triggers of meltdown on a regular basis, not once, on a regular, that will lead to autistic burnout. And I would say the one thing that will almost always land an autistic person in a period of burnout, because it's universal, is masking, camouflaging, hiding your true autistic self for the interests of others. And this is not anything new. If you're an autistic person, you don't need to know these terms. I know you know that on a daily basis, you hide parts of your true autistic self. So other people around you who maybe don't understand it, maybe they do. They just don't care. They don't want to accept it. Bottom line, masking. It leads to burnout. There's only so long an autistic person can continue to suppress. This is an actual action. This is something that we have to do. We're playing a role, right? Except there's never cut on the scene. Constantly masking will lead to autistic burnout. As an autistic person, I'm not great with executive function in the first place, but I can tell you, executive function demands absolutely lead to burnout. In other words, having to juggle too many tasks, tasks for me, tasks for my kids, tasks for my wife, my family. And in those moments, they're going to cause reactions, potentially meltdowns. That's when you need to regulate yourself. You need alone time. You need time to recharge. You need time to bring yourself back, right? But of course, as an adult, you might be a husband, a wife, a partner, a parent, an employee, what you have less time to regulate. As you get more stresses and demands placed upon you because of life, being an adult in the adult world, you have less time to go, hey, kids, just look after yourself a sec, I'll be back in an hour. It's like, no, you don't get time to regulate after these meltdowns or regular alone time and regulation. You aren't going to melt down, my friend. You are going to burn out. And that means you're useless to everyone. We've compared the causes for both meltdown and burnout. Well, now let's compare how autistic meltdowns feel versus how autistic burnouts feel. These are only my personal experiences. They can feel extremely different to any autistic person. We're all different individual autistic people. One thing that I think is pretty general though is a meltdown is an intense reaction. Burnout is an intense exhaustion. But let's break down the key differences. Starting off with autistic meltdowns. They can feel, at least for me, like an overwhelming sense of panic. When I experience them, meltdowns can honestly feel like they're going to last forever. You don't think it'll ever stop. And also, you can't control it. Meltdowns can feel like you can't sit still. Meltdowns can feel like you can't calm down. You can't be reached. They can manifest in many different ways, many different erratic ways. Pacing, running, bolting off, stomping your feet, yelling, crying, stimming. Autistic meltdowns can also manifest into aggressive or potentially harmful stimming. Now, this is the kind of stimming where the people in your life are relied upon to protect you. It's twofolded. One, you need to enable and allow healthy, safe stimming, but you need to also protect an autistic person who's in a meltdown and can't really control actions to make sure that the stimming they're doing is in fact safe and it's not going to harm them or others. Autistic meltdowns can also lead to becoming non-speaking, non-responsive to people. You may just become withdrawn. And that feeling of withdrawing from the world can really help us with our next part of the discussion, which is how do autistic burnouts feel? How do they manifest? For me, I feel it's always this intense exhaustion, this intense physical mental exhaustion. I find it really hard to manage my emotions, which means I can become very angry or agitated very easily. I can also feel more down or sad more often. For me, increased anxiety is a 100% part of autistic burnouts. Remember, autistic meltdowns are in effect reactions. Your brain can no longer go on. It's been overwhelmed, meaning you may feel a bit of anxiety in the moment, but it ends. Autistic burnout can be a long-term exhaustion, a long-term inability to manage anxiety. In fact, a long-term build-up of anxiety. Autistic burnout for me can manifest in more frequent excessive stimming, repetitive behaviors, echolalia, so the repeating of things, pushing back to any kind of routine change. So even if you think autistic people aren't flexible, we are very flexible, living in a world that's not remotely made for us. And when we're not burnt out, you might think we're inflexible. Well, when we're autistically burnt out, there's just pushback to really anything, any minute change. The smallest little change to a routine might seem completely insignificant to anyone, but to us, it could actually derail our entire day. Or for me, in an autistic burnout, it could derail my week. Now, of course, I still have to parent, but I might not make content for the rest of the week. When you're experiencing autistic burnout, it can feel like out of nowhere, you've lost all your skills. You've somehow lost your experiences and skills and knowledge. It's just gone and you don't know where it is. Autistic burnout can take away my speech. When I mean my speech, I don't mean I become completely non-speaking, but I mean I tend to not be able to find the right words. I'm always saying the wrong thing, or I can't actually find the words and therefore I can't even complete the sentence I was trying to say. Autistic burnout can make you feel like you don't even have the ability to complete self-care things, like showering, eating, drinking, exercising, fresh air, the things that you should do for your self-care. I can tell you right now, it just does not happen. Whereas if I was having an autistic meltdown, it wouldn't affect my ability to have a shower an hour later, right? Or eat lunch. No, I would experience my meltdown. I would bring myself back, regulate myself, and then, hey, what's for lunch? There's a big difference. With an autistic burnout, I wouldn't even consider having lunch. I wouldn't even consider having a shower. Even as someone who enjoys communication, talking, performing, entertaining, a bout of autistic burnout even takes away my seemingly natural abilities to communicate, as in like I kind of become a caveman or something. Minimal sounds, like I'll use sounds to communicate. Grunts and small, like one-word sentences. And it's not something I'm doing to annoy my wife or whatever. This is all I've got. It's kind of like a vicious cycle. It's a chicken or the egg, but autistic burnout can really lead to health issues because you feel more run down, and then of course you're picking up more things, and so you can just feel not healthy, not well. Also, and I'm not a researcher or a professor, but this gut link, the gut link, like the gut health for autistic people. And I believe now we're starting to think maybe because our brains are different and the brain controls the gut, maybe that is why our gut issues are seemingly more common in autistic people. It's linked to the brain. But, I'm just a dude. We've got to look into this. But definitely during autistic burnouts, my gut issues, that kind of, that IBS-y kind of weird gut issues, can seem a lot worse, which can lead to bloating, constipation, and all these types of things, gas, that kind of stuff, the IBS type stuff. But see, if I had a meltdown, well, that's not going to affect that because it's a reaction, it's a response. And the last thing I'd say about how autistic burnout can make you feel, well, it makes you feel really autistic, right? It sounds strange. But the fact is, in this neurotypical world, it doesn't really matter who you are. I just don't believe as an autistic person you're able, or even if you think you are, you're not being yourself on a regular basis. You just we aren't able to. But see, during autistic burnout, it's almost impossible to mask. So I think if there's an autistic person in your life, or you're autistic, and you're getting the feedback from the world that you are way more autistic than you usually are, or, like your traits are way more obvious than usual, then I think that's actually a pretty good sign you're experiencing autistic burnout. See, when you're having a meltdown, you're absolutely more autistic than usual, but it lasts for a period, then it stops. All right, Listen up, my friends. Here's my key strategies I hope you can implement to lessen the impact or even maybe potentially avoid autistic meltdowns and autistic burnouts. And clearly they have to be very different, right? So a meltdown, we now know that is basically a reaction, a response from the brain. Don't match the emotion of the autistic person in your life experiencing a meltdown. That's the first thing. I don't know how this is possible. I find sometimes you might see partners or parents that can get angry, or that can raise their voice, or that can almost rise to the level of the autistic person experiencing a meltdown, which is utterly useless and completely unhelpful. They can't be reached. This is a response by the brain. Don't raise your voice. Don't talk down to them or patronize them. Remain calm. Remain the safe person in their life that you are. Don't let this get to you. This isn't about you. So judging the behavior or getting annoyed or angry or agitated or resentful that they would dare act like this, whether it's embarrassing you in front of people or you're just annoyed by it, you need to get over it. Don't tell someone having a meltdown to stop having a meltdown. It's not actually possible and it's just a waste of your energy. Also, sometimes you might have an autistic meltdown because you're in an environment that triggered the meltdown. Assuming you're a parent, say, if you think your child can stay in that environment, you can just take them to a part of the environment that you deem to be better and they'll come out of it. No, don't force someone having an autistic meltdown to remain in the environment that triggered it. Don't withhold comfort things, items, or shows or movies or whatever it is that comforts an autistic person during a meltdown. If it helps, provide it. You're providing it to a person with a medically diagnosed disability to help them through something that they can't control. And don't bribe your way out of it. This is bizarre. Parents try to bribe their kid out of a meltdown? Sure, I'll take the chocolate bar. But right now, all I want to do is take it off you, squish it into a big ball and throw it back at you. And just in case there's like a confusion between me saying don't withhold things that help them, but also don't bribe them, this can be confusing. I guess the best way to say it is you can distract them with things you know comfort them. This could be simming toys or a particular movie or a particular game, right? You can distract them with that, but you don't bribe them. See, bribing is saying, if you stop this meltdown, you can play Pokemon. Getting the game going, getting the remote out, putting the remote down on the couch, ready to play, and going back to your corner and staying there is distracting them. When you're done, Pokemon's ready. And on that subject, by the way, you should know the red flags of your child or your partner. Getting toward, it looks like my wife says I do things, I start to rub my hair on my head or I get fidgety. You should know the red flags by now. Look out for the red flags. I say that because if you know the red flags, as in it's building, and you can provide those things I just talked about, those distracting type things, those comforting things prior to the meltdown, you can actually avoid the meltdown. Strategies for autistic burnout. I'm going to talk specifically from my experiences as a husband and a father, so this is probably more relevant to adults than autistic kids. My content creation, what I'm doing here, this is my passion, my special interest. This is my work. This is my life as an autistic person. This is what I want to do all the time. When I'm experiencing autistic burnout, well, this is the first thing to go. I'm a husband. I'm a father. My special interest is here. If I need to do bits and pieces, it's going to help me, I will. But let's just put a line through it. Let's just say, you know what? No content for a week. No content for a month. I've got to control the controllables. I can't say, hey kids, none of you for a week, right? No. Hey, marriage, none of you for a week. I guess, well, there's some parties you can do. What's that? In essence, I'm cutting back on my output. I'm extending my periods of doing nothing to hopefully lessen my overall time in burnout. Like we've said, a good sign of autistic burnout is you just seem more autistic. And that's feedback you get from other people. It could be parents, family, friends, whatever. The only thing I'd say here is, okay, no duh. But if you want a strategy to help someone in autistic burnout, maybe don't shame them for being more autistic or even bring it up or even point it out. It's a strategy you should definitely adopt. It's more common sense though, right? See, meltdown, computer's forced to reboot, restart, which puts you in that meltdown, but it comes back. It's a much smaller period of time. Burnout, it's frozen. It ain't coming back on for a while. So understanding that in burnout, understanding this, you are frozen. It's not just going to click back on. You're going to have to understand that and embrace that and do the things you know you need to do to rectify that frozen brain. For partners, it's really helpful to just not try to force too many of the regular things on your autistic partner. It doesn't mean they should be getting away with doing nothing. It just means, not overloading, understanding that it's probably going to need to take on a little bit more than you usually would to help them, take a little bit of a load off. It also means do your best to not force social interactions, too many social interactions or social demands on an autistic person in burnout. A big strategy for partners of autistic people experiencing burnout is try not to shame or judge an autistic person for literally doing nothing. I mean nothing. I know there's an expectation that people should do things, and certainly during the day, you might have achieved things like, hey, what did you do today? Nothing. If you, judge that, it doesn't make us feel any better. It makes us feel actually quite horrible. It alters our mental health and it probably prolongs the burnout. So just try to not judge it. Support it. I don't mean it in a way like, hey, you should do this all the time. But I mean, just by not judging it, you are supporting it, understanding why it's necessary. And for autistic people, you know what? You can't keep relying on everyone else in your life. Please try to get to know your own triggers and red flags and signs. And why this is powerful is because you know when a meltdown is coming, and you know when you're starting to feel like a burnout is coming. And you can turn it around, or at least try to turn it around, which will decrease the duration of it or the severity of the meltdown. Of course, none of these strategies would be even remotely relevant if autistic people were just allowed to be themselves in their own life. If the community at large decided, you know what, we're going to accept, understand and appreciate autistic people and allow them to be themselves rather than punishing them for being autistic, we would not have to be talking about this right now. There'd be no strategies required. Unfortunately, it just isn't the case. As someone diagnosed later in life as an autistic person, I think it can be really tricky to understand all these experiences and all these terms: autistic meltdown, autistic burnout, shutdown. So I hope the video has, in some way help you explain the many differences of experiencing a meltdown versus a burnout. I've got other videos on burnout and meltdown you should check out as well. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching. I would love it if you would share this video. Just doing that, sharing it with the world, helps me reach more people to really raise the level of understanding and acceptance of the autistic community. So until my next video, I appreciate you sharing and being a part of this community, and we'll talk soon.